Yo, the Foul Hooked Whitey is back. Not only am I back, I'm back from Cuba. And, you know, this trip, which I talked about previously, ended up being so much more than just a fly fishing trip. Before that, fly fishing Nielsen ratings came in. And we continue to plummet. We remain in the negative as far as listenership. And, you know, and let's face it, this isn't very good. But we're going to keep doing it. And I appreciate the -3 out there that are listening to us. So, the Jardins de la Reina, Cuba, otherwise known as the Gardens of the Queen, really had a lot of impact on me over the 8, 9, 10 days I was there. And, you know, the impact, as I start this, didn't have anything to do with the fucking fishing. And that surprised me, because even though I've got a lot of experience hosting these trips, they're all different in their own way. And to get on a liveaboard with not only 8 fishermen, but 20 plus fucking Russians. We stayed on, the Avalon 4, which is, their biggest operating ship for the liveaboard experience, which is getting on the ship, sleeping on the ship, launching from the ship every day on your skiff, eating on the ship, shitting on the ship. I mean, you get it. I mean, you're there except for your fishing hours for 8 days, 7 days. So even though this is a big yacht, you're around all of these folks for that period of time. And they're just right there. They're right there in the dining hall. They're right there at the launching point, because these Russians were not there to fish. They were there to dive. So this operation that week was 8 fishermen, that was us, and then 20 Russians. And I need to talk about these Russians, because I need to testify how impactful the human experience was on this fishing trip, and maybe more than even the fishing. And the fishing was good. But as I started this week, as we got to Miami, stayed overnight, got back to the airport that early that morning on Saturday, and then checked in and started to make our way to Camagüey, Cuba, which is small airport, close to where we were going to be bused to the liveaboard, where we were going to then go out into the habitat and fish for that 7 nights, 6 days. On this bus ride, which is to me very cool, it was about 2.5 plus hours. You're driving through like rural and like small town Cuba, and I mean, fuck it, it is like you just stepped in a time machine. Nothing about these communities, and I'm not coming off like, these aren't sophisticated folk, because Cubans are, for having nothing, they're way fucking sophisticated. So I say to my group, listen, just be aware. There's going to be, 20 commies on this fucking boat. And then I make one of the more dumb statements that I've made recently. I think probably not, maybe, but definitely a top 10. And I look at my group, at least most of them, like, I hate Russians. That's one of the dumber things I've said professionally, because again, I'm hosting this trip. Folks are looking at me. And to say something like that is not only just ignorant, it's rude, because I don't know shit. I've traveled a lot, and I've been impacted by a lot of folks, including folks without a dime. But to say something like that is just it's indicative of my demographic, which is, I grew up during the tail end of the hostilities of the Cold War. This is back in the day when the United States and Russia, we were the only motherfuckers with nuclear warheads. I talked about how the nuclear arsenal of Russia, which ended up being pointed at us for a short period from Cuba back in the day, that's created this whole weirdness when it comes to Cuba, our relationship with Cuba, and the dynamics of the Russians being there. So, that's why I said it. I said it because, when I was like in third grade, they said, hey, if that big fucking alarm goes off, get under your desk. That seems ridiculous now, but, like I said, I didn't grow up like, looking at Russia like, they were our buddies. So that played into that stupid fucking statement of saying I hate Russians. We end up checking into our liveaboard, fucking beautiful ship, well maintained, the staff, bam, top notch, beautiful people. That includes everybody in the kitchen, everybody in the dining hall, everybody that gets our gear ready in the morning and gets us launched with our guides, puts our lunches in the right cooler, makes sure we have enough beer, pop, and everything else. And it just immediately, this feeling of being on this ship with these people was fucking comfortable immediately. The little bit of interaction I had with these Russians, it was good English and all fucking smiles. And, again, I just said I hate Russians. So, even at my advanced age, I can learn some shit. And I learned right off the bat in cohabitating this liveaboard with these 8 anglers and 20 Russians, this was going to be all right. They were, again, there exclusively to dive. And on one evening, this Russian dame walks up to me and my wife and says, "Are you going to come down and watch the presentation on sponges?" And I'm like, what the fuck? It's like sponges, huh? I mean, we all know what we're talking about, like flats and sea sponges. And so there's this one dude that's in this group that's, the motherfucker's like inquisitive as fuck. He's talking to me, he's talking to my wife, and he speaks superb English, and he's giving this presentation on fucking sponges. But what was amazing about this presentation, and I modestly give a fuck about sponges. Let's be real. But again, it was the closeness and the kind of the support of going down and listening to fucking Sponge Man about shit I don't care about. But it was so knowledgeable and thorough and important because in a combination of Russian and English, this fucking dude, he would make a statement in Russian, looking at his, group of Ruskies, and then he'd turn right the fuck around and say the same fucking thing in perfect English. And I'm just sitting there fucking going, fuck, this is cool. He's talking about how these sponges are able to pump water in, get their nutrients and shit, and then filter that water as it releases it back into the environment. That's what I fucking got out of it. And I would have never attended anything having to do with sponges. But because these Russians were so fucking generally nice, I wanted to go down and hear about these sponges. So the experience in being with these non-angling folks who are, right now globally, fucking Russians are ostracized, man. I mean, let's be real. I've got a friend that was on this trip, and this motherfucker will talk to anything about anybody. I mean, I love him, but I mean, he's a penis doctor, and he's fucking good, and he'll give spot on penis advice on the spot. Bam. This guy ends up having a conversation with like a decent sized group of these Russians about, What do you think about Putin invading fucking Ukraine? And I mean, you know, I'm a fucking big mouth, but I would never feel like I could just, you know, ask something that's right now so sensitive. And that conflict is sensitive. And I'm, you know, listen, I realize how bad this content is as it pertains to the fly fishing, you know, industry. But it ties into the value of coughing up the dough, prioritizing the time, and going on one of these fucking adventures, because my background in what Russia and what Russians are to me is skewed. You know, I'm older. You know, I'm a patriotic motherfucker. And, you know, they haven't been our friends. So I go in ignorant. And I learned. And I learned through fly fishing, because fly fishing these flats at the Gardens of the Queen is what brought me there. So it's funny, you know, I've been ranting for, you know, 12, 15 minutes, and I haven't said a fucking word about the fishing at the Gardens of the Queen. Because as I came away from that, like I said, a decent to good fishing week, what impacted me was the interactions with my group of anglers and these commies. You know, there was a guy in my group that I love this dude. Elements of this group got a little bit weird, and I'm not going to talk about that, but personalities on some trips, it can be hard. Not with me, but with maybe themselves and others. So, but this dude, one night we were kind of toasting. It was like, I think our second or our last night there on the liveaboard. And, you know, he says, I want to make a toast. And he says, you know, I came here thinking you were commies. I mean, fuck, you know, I mean, that, you know, this, you got 12 communist Cubans in the room. You got 20, you know, communist Russians in the room. And I you know, obviously I'm being sarcastic with the communism part, but, you know, not folks that our country has any good relations with. That's big, right? And, you know, this dude basically said, I came here and you changed me. And, you know, that experience of being around these Russians for that week plus changed me. And that's the value of going on these trips, because it's weird. It ends up being way more valuable than the fishing. So that's it. The end of episode 1. Fly fishing the Gardens of the Queen. Foul Hooked Whitey is out. I'll be back.